Right. Welcome to our virtual graphic novel club. My name is Erica Ware.
Rolling well maker.
Yeah, so we're jumping right on in today because it's hot here at Forest Park. So we're going to get started. Today we're talking about Asian and Pacific American heroes of DC and Marvel. It is Asian and Pacific American Heritage Month for the United States, the month of May. We celebrate that here in the United States. And so we figured today we would kind of focus on a little bit of the history of, first of all, why we highlight this particular month and some of the heroes of just our main two, DC and Marvel. We're not going to get into some of the independents, but they may get mentioned in some of the history too. So, all right, let's jump right on in. All right, so Asian. I'm going to start talking about first just Asian heritage in the United States, the Asian American history, and a lot of the images that we will show here may not be of as politically correct as they should be, but we're just talking about history, so um, please don't add us. but so Asian and Pacific Islanders do have a vibrant history in this country. But when you look at media, especially mainstream media in Western culture, there's a lot of stereotypes that have sort of just what any person of color has had to endure in the United States, but also just in Western history. There was a huge influx of Chinese Americans or Chinese in the 1880s. Immigration was high for particularly for the Chinese because the United States was going through a huge boom, industrial boom during this time, and we were connecting east to west. And with the connection of east to west, you're talking about railroad connections. And a lot of Chinese immigrants came to work on the railroads, building railroad tracks, and specifically from California, the whole West Coast to from the East Coast. The connection of the railways and the railroad tracks. And so the US media kind of had this image of Chinese Americans. They depicted them as in hurtful and untrue representations. They call this time the Yellow Peril because it was deeply rooted, stemming from the fear of sort of that European Mongolian invasion that they had in Europe at one point in time. And so this fear of alien culture, so this unknown group of people coming to America, and they were very different and very much not like the American way of life. And so they put this fear mongering into the public through media. You had both, like bucktooth, slanty eyes, yellow in particular as the color. But on top of this, the mainstream perception of Asian culture was just, it didn't matter where they came from in Asia, they were always depicted this way. So it just kind of blended out the culture of anybody coming from this particular region of the world and putting them into this big pot of stereotypes. These hurtful images continued from the 1880s on, and after the immigration, and most of these people stayed and settled in America. The stereotypes continued, especially in areas where there was sort of a Chinatown, things like that, in big cities, especially along the West Coast and even the East Coast. Um, right here we have Detective Comics #1, and this was DC, early DC. This was a supervillain, Ching Long, who was very stereotypical. Black eyes, pointy tooth grin, and that facial hair, the really thin, and the hat and all that. little ponytail also. This is not how all Asians look. By this point, most of the people that lived in this country had assimilated to most of the American culture of how we dress and how we do things like that. But this is what the media is showing you. These images continued, especially after World War II. During World War II, when Pearl Harbor was bombed, in comic books in general, you had, especially DC, you had superheroes fighting the Axis powers, especially Japanese. Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, so they were the United States' main focus of enemy. Propaganda during this time for the war effort, you had, again, that yellow skin, buck-tooth teeth, thick glasses. They talk. They even depicted their speech as broken English, and in the war effort to fight, quote unquote, the Japanese, or as they referred to them as the Japs, which was a derogatory name in general. These characters were presented almost monstrous. They had they were made to be subhuman, made to look like they weren't like everyone else, every human being that walked around. And this was done on purpose. These characters were all lumped into one category. They were either from the Orient, they were called Oriental. You just had all of Asia into one lump category. There was no distinctions between cultures or countries. Captain America was fighting the Japs. It was one of those things that everyone was alike. And on top of that, during this time, you also had in the United States, were rounding up Japanese during this time and putting them in internment and incarcerating them in camps to separate them from the rest of the population, due to the fact that Japan had bombed Pearl Harbor. I did not know this, but a lot of America did not even know that was going on in 1941, because it was an executive order signed by Franklin D. Roosevelt, and the media did not even publicize it that much. It was not found out until later that this happened, and it caused a stir then. But yes, their homes were taken, they were seized, they were put into camps, and this reflected poorly on the United States later once it was found out. The perceptions did not change in the 1950s, because during the 1950s, there was another fear mongering going on, and we had the Red Scare. Joseph McCarthy was big on Capitol Hill, saying, beware of what's at home, beware of us at home. So instead of, we go from the 40s of the war effort and things are going on and we're fighting abroad, and now we're bringing it back into the Red Scare. Now you're looking at your neighbor and you're trying to figure out if my neighbor is a communist. And on top of that, China became a communist country during that time too. So perceptions of Chinese Americans changed also with that. The fear that the communists were taking over. You had characters like the Yellow Claw, which was a villain that was created just in lieu of this. And you also had a character who was created who was called Egg Foo, and we will got a picture of him there. This is someone Captain America faced off of during World War II, Fiend of the Orient. There, as you can see, that depiction of monstrous like. And then you have the Yellow Claw, who was the 1950s, and the Red Scare. And 1965, you also had Wonder Woman facing off against Egg Foo, or Steve Trevor. And I don't know if you could see it or blow it up, but and just read some of that dialogue there. It's very offensive. But along with that, as the 70s rolled in, you had a change in how we viewed Asian culture. A big thing about that was the influence of films from Hong Kong, and you had Bruce Lee come along and usher in this new type of star, this kung fu star. Western audiences were excited about this. They watched the dub movies. They loved Bruce Lee. So of course the media picks up on this, especially comic books, and Marvel and DC during this time. In the 70s, they usher in these new characters that are um, kung fu related, basically. You had characters like Shang-Chi, which we will cover today. He was created in 1973 by Marvel. DC created Katana in 1983. Again, they were positive representations now of Asian characters that were heroes, and they were seeking to revenge the wrongs that were done to them in their lives. So we move sort of out of that stereotypical media representation of characters, and now we're getting into some better representation. Of course, not all Asians did kung fu, but it was one step at a time, one step at a time. Those characters were created on top of some more that we will talk about today, but moving into the 2000s, you had new stereotypes. What we like to call tiger moms, and we like to call that, in this country, it was called the model person of color. We call they were pigeonholed Asian. It didn't matter where you were from. If you were from Southeast Asia, if you were from Northern, it didn't matter if you were from Japan, if it didn't matter if you were from Indonesia. You have this stereotypical model minority that comes to play. So the media is now picking up on this, these tiger moms, you're pushing you to be successful and better. And then you're pigeonholed into being great at math and science and technology in general. The 80s was a huge time in Japan for lots of technology coming out of Japan and that region of the world. And so you're just great at computers and all these things. And some of the characters we talk about today, hopefully they don't fit into this pigeonhole, but this is what the mainstream media was leaning on in the early 2000s and ongoing. But that model minority is still prevalent, especially in the United States culture. And just going to talk briefly about Southeast Asian representation. That has changed over time for comic books. A lot of the early comic books were sort of these stories about maybe pirates and swashbucklers and all these things. They were not so much superheroes, but they were just everyday people who had maybe they had a special amulet or a power like that. Like you had people like the Phantom, who was created by Lee Falk. His real name in the comic was Kit Walker, but he had a fictional country that was in Southeast Asia, which was similar to Thailand. It was based on Thailand, called Bangla. That's where he was based, but he was a white man based in this area who protected the locals of this area from the evils of the world that was coming in. So you had stereotypical brown characters that were they were supporting characters. The Phantom got better with time. It was created in 1937, but it did get better with time, and it has a more diverse cast. I think the last time a Phantom comic was produced was like 2006, but you still had that same dialect. Modern times also for Southeast Asian culture of between India, Pakistan, Thailand, Indonesia, some of those countries down there. Modern times, especially post 9/11 for this area, everybody was kind of lumped into brown skin equals quote unquote terrorist, according to the media. There was a lot of talk when I was doing my research on this on how the media represents this particular area. Everyone's assumed to be Muslim, which is not the case. There's Hindu in India, and then there's even Christianity and many other cultures and religions. But if you were from this area, if you were from Pakistan, you were considered terrorist. And unfortunately, that's how movies and TV, it talked a lot about movies and TV representation. You also had the stereotypical gas station attendant, your quickie mart, according to The Simpsons, your who was ran by someone who was maybe from this general region of that world, of our world. And so that broken English, or they were represented by as a terrorist on television. But comics tried to do their best during this time not to fall into that sort of trap. And we'll talk about some of the characters from that area of the world today also, and their representation in comics. But not a lot. India did have their own, around the 1950s, they built their own comic book. They saw the example that was coming out of the Western world of these comics in this era. And the more popular thing there was horror comics. They created their own horror comics and suspense, and they like the horror and suspense genre. So yeah, they still read your was it a what was it? They read the Phantom. They liked the Phantom. They also read Flash Gordon. They enjoyed Flash Gordon, but then they created their own stuff that represented their culture best. So I thought that was pretty cool too. And that's all I have for background in history today. So I'm trying to be as quick as possible, Roland. Did I lose you? Well, we'll go ahead and start talking about DC today. So we're not going to cover we can't cover every character because there are some that are too small to even talk about, but or find information on. And some of them are just, like I said, some of them I talked about earlier were just truly negative stereotypes. And we wanted to focus on some positive stereotypes here today. So jump right into DC and Cassandra Cain. She's actually one of my favorite from the Bat family. She is the fourth Batgirl. She went by Orphan when she first showed up in Gotham. She's the daughter of David Cain, and actually somebody else we're going to talk about later. Her mother is Lady Shiva is her mom. She was deprived of speech. Her father basically raised her to be a weapon. She was an experiment to him. He is a villain in the Gotham and Bat world. And so David Cain raised her, didn't teach her how to read or write. He didn't even teach her language. Her first language was movement. And he taught her physical language. And so she showed up. He gave her like an ultimatum to kill someone, and after she killed someone for the first time, as he had been training her all her life, and you got to remember she's like around the age of 12 at this time, she kills her first person, and she realizes that hey, I am not a she realizes right from wrong. Whereas he was trying to create a weapon, she never lost her consciousness. And so she runs away from her father and ends up in Gotham during the time of No Man's Land series. And that means basically what happened, Gotham was closed off to the outside world, and it was no man's land. Like anything went in Gotham, and Batman was there. The Bat family was there, but they were trying to contain a problem. And most of the people that were locked up in Arkham were loose at this time. And so even the government wouldn't even come in and help at this time. So she comes in as orphan during this time. And what happens is Barbara Gordon, who is Oracle, sees her sort of fighting crime across the city during this time. And she kind of befriends her, even though Cassandra cannot speak or communicate with Barbara. They figure out a way to do that. And Barbara ends up, when No Man's Land is over, Barbara ends up turning over her Batgirl suit, and Bruce Batman ends up adopting her into the Bat family. She replaces Helena, who is Helena? I'm slipping my mind right now. But she replaces Helena in the Bat family, and she is the fourth Batgirl to come along. She eventually turns over her Batgirl costume and becomes Black Bat. And she's still a part of the Bat family. Stephanie Brown is Batgirl, I think, at this point in time. But yeah, Cassandra Cain, if you watched the Emancipation of Harley Quinn, Cassandra Cain is the little girl who they're chasing around Gotham because she stole from Black Mask. But that is not who the real Cassandra Cain is, because obviously she is a weapon. She was trained to be a weapon. So yeah, she is quite a fighter.
And that Helena Bertinelli is actually Huntress.
That's right, Huntress. That's it.
All right. So next up we have Grace Choi. And Grace Choi is one of the characters that is you can see on the Black Lightning CW series that actually just closed out this week. She's actually half Korean and half Egyptian. She didn't know anything about her background because she was always raised in foster homes. When she did find out something about her background, she found out that she was half Amazonian, and not just any Amazonian, but Amazonian of the Bana Migdal tribe. And these Amazonians, like Wonder Woman, are basically have the strength of the gods. Now, where Grace Choi is different, she's actually stronger than Wonder Woman in that she is considered an Amazonian juggernaut. So, on the TV show, they give her a few more powers than what she actually has. I guess you could think of her as a version of Wonder Woman who does not carry a sword or the lasso. She's better at using her hands. She has been a member of the Outsiders, the Batman's group called the Outsiders. And she is also the wife of Black Lightning's daughter, Thunder, Anissa Pierce. And this is played out not only in the comics, but also in the TV show as well.
And they're both a part of wow. They're both
a part of the Outsiders.
Outsiders, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And basically, she, like I said before, her powers are divine empowerment. She has an enhanced sense of smell, superhuman strength, superhuman durability, and accelerated healing. The powers that they changed out in the TV show, she basically is what's the word for it? A shapeshifter, because she goes between her normal state to she can become an old man. In time, she has become a cheetah or a jaguar. And those are basically her powers.
All right. Okay, we have Katana. Now, as I said earlier, Katana was one of those characters that was created in the height of the Kung Fu era of media. And so she was DC's answer to that time period. A lot of the themes of this time period also were someone who was wronged and was seeking revenge. And Katana is the ultimate revenge seeker. She is a martial artist. Her weapon, that sword she carries there, is the Soul's Taker, which we'll speak about a little bit later. It captures the souls of anybody who's killed by it. She is seeking justice for her family, basically her husband and her children, who were murdered by gang members in Japan. And so that sword, she's a member of the Suicide Squad, so not good, not bad. She's on that border. The Outsiders, Justice League of America, and the Birds of Prey. Sh like I said, not good, not bad. She is all about right and what is right. And if that means that any means necessary is any means necessary to her. But the Soul Taker, the sword she has is it's said to be cursed, and it makes those who evil commit evil acts, and so and it stores the souls of those it kills. Her husband is inside that sword because he was killed by that sword. And it has magical properties, and it is able to penetrate skin of none other than Kryptonians, which is Superman. She can sort of talk to those who are in, like, because it takes souls, she sort of can still hear some of those souls that are in there. So she can still communicate with her husband. But not her children. So she has a very sad backstory, but she is a beast with the sword. And she also is, she's been depicted in the Suicide Squad movies. I don't know if she'll be back for the next movie. I haven't paid attention to the trailer for the new movies, but I went back too far. But she was in the first movie, as you can see right there. She's there with holding that sword. But she had her role with, I don't think it wasn't small, but she wasn't the main character of that particular feature, so you didn't really see her a lot. She was just there. Next up.
Okay, next up we have Ryan Choi, the Atom. Now he is actually the second Atom, and his story begins where he is a teaching assistant to the Ivy League University professor Ray Palmer, the first Atom, and he basically Ryan Choi was his in-house assistant at the school, but Palmer basically trusted him enough to let him in on his secret that he was the Atom. So because they worked together real closely, Ryan Choi actually became just as proficient with Ray Palmer's technology as Ray Palmer was. So what ended up happening is Ray Palmer basically was researching a set of robberies that somebody used. They used time travel to accomplish. And what ended up happening is, as he was investigating, he ended up being trapped in a remote location and was not able to. The only way he was able to get out was that he was able to send a message to Ryan Choi for help and asked Ryan Choi to grab one of the bio belts that they had been working on and to basically lead the search to find him. Now, they didn't find him right away. It was a while before they found him. And so Ryan Choi was basically holding down the lab. And while he was holding down the lab, basically Batman and Lobo showed up because Batman wanted to recruit Ray Palmer for a spot in the Justice League, or well, let's say the Justice League 2. And when Ryan Choi told Batman that Ray Palmer was missing, Batman decided he was going to leave. He didn't even want to deal with Ryan Choi. But Lobo saw some of the equations that Ryan Choi had written on the wall on a chalkboard or whatever, and was impressed with them and understood the science. So he was the one who basically made Batman backtrack and asked Ryan Choi, did he want to become a part of the Justice League as the Atom, since he knew about the technology. And that's basically it. One of Ryan Choi's claim to fame is that he recruited the Ray to the Justice League, and I think the Ray's claim to fame is that he is the first openly gay DC character that was out. So he was the first. Huh?
I said, oh, at that time.
Yes. And he was brought in by Ryan Choi. Now, in the end, they basically reunite. So there are two Atoms because in the Marvel universe, because Ray Palmer did not give up the mantle of the Atom right away. So both of them were kind of working at the same time under the same name until Ray Palmer basically um, he wanted to stop being a superhero basically.
Gave up his mantle.
In the current timeline, Ryan Choi was the story ends at that time, but I'm not sure if they brought. I know they brought him back in the Rebirth series, so I'm not even going to get into that because that's a convoluted storyline that's all brand new.
Yep, no, we're not going down that. That's a rabbit hole. No. All right. Next we have Lady Shiva. I mentioned her earlier because she is really Cassandra Cain's mother. She is Sandra Wu San, who is Lady Shiva. She's known as the world's greatest martial artist. She's in competition with Richard Dragon, Connor Hawk, who is Green Arrow, Batgirl, and of course Batman. But she is possibly the greatest. Her daughter has, in a sense, challenged her quite a few times because Lady Shiva's number one enemy is Batgirl, Sandra Cain's Batgirl, and they have they're not a typical mother-daughter duo there. She has brought her daughter to literally the point of almost death and challenged her to kill her also. So that was a very complicated and everybody needs therapy relationship. We'll just leave it there. She became Lady Shiva again. This reoccurring theme of after tragedy, her sister was killed, so she's seeking revenge. The whole revenge storyline. She became a ruthless villain, but she also at times has been a vigilante. And she's mentored other superpowered people. So she is the mother of Batgirl, but again, that is a very, very there's not enough therapy there. So yeah, and she's been a part of not Suicide Squads. I believe she's been a part of the Birds of Prey for a little while. But she pretty much works on her own. She doesn't do a lot of teamwork, and hence the ruthlessness. And she doesn't really trust a lot of people. But yeah, she is very much a force to be reckoned with in the DC universe, and she pops up a lot of times in Batman and all around the DC universe. So she's a formidable assassin.
All right.
Did I go too far?
Yeah, go back one.
Okay, go back. Dr. Light, yes, that's what I meant.
Okay. So our next member up is Dr. Light. Now, before I get into Dr. Light, let's make this clear. In the DC universe, we have a named Arthur Light, who was actually a villain, and you will see him in the Flash's Rogues Gallery. So if you want information on Arthur Light, who is the Dr. Light that you saw, well, actually, I do believe you saw two instances. You saw both Dr. Lights on TV in the CW on the Flash. They showed the first Dr. Light, and he was a villain, and then they showed the female Dr. Light, In the TV show, they showed her as more of an anti-hero. She really wasn't good or bad. She was just out to make something happen, and I don't remember what. But but when we get into this Dr. Light, her name is Kimiyo Hoshi, and basically she was a scientist and a supervising astronomer at an observatory, and she was overseeing a group of astronomers that were charting the unnatural effects that were occurring in outer space that basically were part of the crisis on infinite Earths. They didn't know what they were looking at, but as the crisis continued and she got obsessed with it, the men that were working with her basically became concerned for their safety. And so she was so disgusted at them because they were viewing an event that was millions of miles away through a telescope. And because of their fear, she basically insulted them and ordered an evacuation, leaving her to study the crisis by herself. Now, all that time that she's studying the crisis, basically the monitor is in a battle with the anti-monitor, and what's happening is he senses the anti-monitor wiping out another Earth, and what he decides to do is he wants to tip the scales in order to help save this Earth. And what he ends up doing is he sends a beam of energy from the Vega star down to Earth, and that beam is meant for Dr. Light. Now, it's a very destructive beam, and it destroys a lot of land on Earth. But what it in fact does is this beam of energy basically strikes Camille Hoshi and grants her the power of photonics, basically, which is the power to control light. Um, she basically remembers she is in Japan, and she is a what's the word for it? She's native. She's native. She's a native Japanese doctor. So when the beam hits the Earth, the Teen Titans and the Outsiders move in to basically kind of, to see what happened and to help mitigate whatever issues are going on because of the destructive power of that beam that just hit. When they get to the scene, they run into Dr. Light. However, she can't communicate with him because she's speaking Japanese at the time. The only so what ends up happening is Dr. Light had been tasked with guarding I guess you could say a tuning fork, a dimensional tuning fork or something that was necessary to save Earth when the anti-monitor attacked. But the Teen Titans and the Outsiders were there to destroy the tuning fork because they did not know its purpose. They just thought that it had something to do with the devastating beam of energy that had just hit the Earth. So what ends up happening is that she basically starts attacking them to keep them away from the tuning fork. And the only way that they're able to get through to her is that Superman shows up on the scene. And Superman is multilingual, so he ends up being able to communicate with her. And basically, at that point in time, they know that they need to work together. Um, Katana, who we just covered, being a member of the Titans at the time, she takes over as her translator. Now, once she is granted, sooner or later, she's granted the ability to understand English. So at this point, this is when she joins the rest of the heroes and goes to confront the Anti-Monitor. And so once she see, I think in this storyline, this is the storyline when Supergirl is killed.
So you're talking about Infinite Crisis on Infinite Earth.
Right. This is where the Anti-Monitor ambushes Superman or whatever.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Light is the one who comes in to defend Superman. Supergirl arrives and sacrifices herself.
Yep.
Then and that allows Dr. Light to carry Superman to safety. And this is also what makes Dr. Light know that she needs to use her powers for hero work, basically, instead of just she was never a villain, but she was kind of selfish. She just because she had the powers, she was not using them to help people. But it's at this moment that Supergirl sacrifices herself that Dr. Light changes.
Oh, look at that. Full circle. Full circle. All right. We're moving on to Marvel. See the representation here in Marvel. And first on the list is Kamala Khan, who is the Miss Marvel, not to be confused with Captain Marvel, although Captain Marvel is one of her mentors, who really actually admires her and looks up to her. But Kamala Khan is a Muslim and Pakistani American teenager. As you can see, she has really long, stretchy abilities. She is a member of the Young Avengers. She's from New Jersey, so she's a Jersey girl. She has inhuman lineage activated by Terrigen. Is that Terrigen bomb? That sounds real familiar. That sounds real familiar. Is that like that was from one of the Avenger movies?
Yeah. Did you ever watch The Inhumans?
I didn't like that.
Did you ever watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? That's how all the Inhumans would turn.
I watched a couple of episodes of the Inhumans, but we're not gonna get on that soapbox. She's polymorph, which means she could stretch her body, kind of like Mr. Fantastic, as you can see. Those little long arms. She's a member of the New Avengers, the Champions, the Agents of Atlas, and the Iron Legion. She was when she was added to when they were coming up with Miss Marvel, and they said that she would be a Muslim Pakistani American teenager. This was also in like the early 2000s, right after what I said earlier about the positive images that comics was trying to filter out after post 9/11. And so and she was Muslim and she was Pakistani, but she has everyday problems like every other teenager in this world. And she was a positive image that people could look to and say, you know, I can relate to her. I can see myself in her. Kind of the same thing that people said about Peter Parker when he first premiered also. So it was a really good thing. She's still a really popular character, especially with the New Avengers. If you watch the show on Disney Plus, it kind of highlights each member of the New Avengers team. One of the episodes is about her, so it's she's a really cool hero. And like I said, Captain Marvel is actually one of her mentors, even though their powers are vastly different, but she's in that Marvel family. You have Captain Marvel, and then you have Marvel, Mr. Marvel is his name. You have her. So there's a whole Marvel family, and they all have their own unique powers. But yeah, she's a really cool character. Right along here.
Okay. All right. So now this next one, we're going to breeze straight through this one because this one has a very long history, and we're talking about the ancient one of Doctor Strange fame. Many don't know this, but he has a name, and his name is Yao. In current in the TV, I mean, not in the TV, but in current news, you know, they're saying that they're mad that for this character, they actually used Tilda Swinton in the movie,
Oh, yeah.
and they saying now that they should have went on and used an Asian man because that would have been truer to his storyline, but they were trying to be different and not fall into the trap of, you know, the stereotypical ancient Asian man,
But
which was funny, but that's exactly what his character is.
exactly,
So,
and they whitewashed his character,
right.
which, and even Marvel exec Kevin Feige came back and said he shouldn't
Right.
have done that.
He shouldn't have done it.
He shouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Now, this character's story starts in the 1430s. He was born in the mystic city of Kamartaj, which is a village in the Himalayan area now known as Tibet. Um, the ancient ones claim to fame as he is the mystic mentor of Baron Carl Mordo, Dr. Stephen Strange, and Wong. All of these are the main characters of that Marvel Doctor Strange movie. There's one more character that he was he wasn't really the direct mentor of, but the character Caecilius, who was mentored by Baron Mordo. So in turn, he was one of the Ancient One's students as well. Um, Now, the Ancient One was actually the Earth's previous Sorcerer Supreme before Doctor Strange got that title. And one of the ways that he earned that title was that back in the day, doesn't really say how long it was, but he is the first Earth Sorcerer to basically bind Dormammu. Um, he discovered a temple, the Temple of Cyttorak back in Korea, and is the only sorcerer who fought Dormammu to a standstill. And basically, what he ended up doing was he ended up banishing Dormammu and shielding the Earth against his evil influence. And so, this whole time, Dormammu has been held at bay by the Ancient One's power, not by Doctor Strange, not by the Eye of Agamotto, but by the Ancient One himself. Uh, he was sought out. He granted powers to the Marvel character Dr. Druid, and later on, Baron Carl Mordo decided he was going to search him out because he wanted to be his pupil. The Ancient One decided he would go on and tutor Mordo, but he started realizing that Mordo had evil ambitions. And so what he tried to do was try to convert Mordo to good to at least try to keep him in check. But what ended up happening is when Doctor Strange came into the mix and the Ancient One healed Doctor Strange and taught him the mystic ways, Baron Mordo basically became jealous. And so that kicked off I guess you can say, a lifelong, rivalry between Carl Mordo and Stephen Strange, that basically the Ancient One steps in only when they're about to do each other damage. He never allows them to hurt each other in the comic books, but he allows for Doctor Strange to shut Baron Mordo down in an effort to save, to keep him from his evil machinations. Basically, he is using magic to keep himself looking younger, because, like I said, again, he was born in the 1430s, and he is either approaching or has surpassed the age of 500 years. So at this point in time, he passes his power to Doctor Strange, as he is not able to perform any major feats of sorcery without placing himself in great harm by placing physical strain upon himself. And so that is the Ancient One.
All right. Ow. All right, and to continue on with Doctor Strange, we have Wong, who is Doctor Strange's. Well, I guess he served the Ancient One, it looks like, but he's a Tibetan monk who lived about 1,000 years ago. He's the firstborn male in the lines of to serve the Ancient One, so who is the former Sorcerer Supreme. When he reached adulthood, the Ancient One sent him to the United States to Doctor Strange, Stephen Strange, to be his disciple. Um, he's an expert in martial arts of Kamartaj, and he has the potential to wield magic. Uh, Wong is also he and Doctor Strange have a love-hate relationship. They don't always agree, but they on how to save loved ones. But he is rejoined back with Doctor Strange as the Avengers' new cook and housekeeper. So it's kind of Doctor Strange's right-hand man again. At one point in time, this depiction of him was not at the greatest, but it has changed over the years, and he's wielded more power. And at times, like I said, he and Strange, he goes toe to toe with Strange on how to handle certain situations. And if you've seen the first Doctor Strange movie, he and Wong go toe to toe a lot. They don't always agree. So and that's a good thing. He's not just his assistant, but they do consider each other in a sense friends now. So yeah.
All right, the next one. Okay, so we're gonna say Psylocke, but she has three names: Quanon and Revanche. Basically, we'll start with the name Quanon. She was named that by the Hand, and which is an ancient ninja clan that deals in mystical ways. She was raised from birth to be a killer, and as one of Japan's top assassins, she abandoned the Hand and became the top operative of a crime boss named Lord Nyorin. This basically brought her into conflict with her lover and rival, the Hand's assassin Matsu Sorayeva. I can't pronounce it, but it is what it is. She basically almost died in a battle with Matsu, and the Hand had her body basically brought back to one of their temples. And it's here that they basically switched her body with that of the original X-Man Psylocke named Betsy Braddock. Betsy Braddock ended up basically, they found Betsy Braddock body unconscious and suffering complete amnesia after she washed on a shore on a Japanese beach near one of their strongholds after I forget who she was battling, but she didn't lose the battle, but she was knocked unconscious. And so what they did, they took Betsy Braddock's body and did basically a mind switch. When Quanon came to, she basically believed herself to be Braddock, and she took the code name Revanche and joined the X-Men. And through this time, she discovered her true nature, and it's at this time that she basically contracted the legacy virus that was killing a lot of mutants. When she contracted the virus, she was mercy killed by her ex lover rival of the Hand. And when she did this, though, Braddock continued to live in her original body. Because remember, they just switched the bodies out to give her a more powerful body. So when Braddock was killed by the villain Sapphire Styx, she basically rebuilt her original body, and Quanon was sent back to her own body during this process. She basically still had memories of being an X-Men, so she became an ally of the X-Men. and she joined them on the live island Krakoa. That and it was there that she reclaimed the code name Psylocke because Betsy Braddock basically became the new Captain Britain, and so that's the moniker that she took.
I knew that name sounds familiar because I was like, Braddock reminds me of
Right. Remember,
yeah,
this is a retcon because
yeah,
the original Captain Britain was a guy, and his last
yeah,
name was Braddock.
yeah. So because I was like, Betsy Braddock, that sounds so familiar.
Yeah,
And then, yeah, okay.
and
So
and I can't remember. She is related to him in some form
mhm.
or fashion. I can't remember if she's the sister or the wife, ex-wife,
I think she's
or
his.
whatnot,
I think
or
she's his
cousin.
sister. I think she's his sister from what I've
Right.
read about Captain Britain. Yeah.
Now, the one last thing about Psylocke, basically, for the sake of her daughter, she had to forge an uneasy alliance with Mr. Sinister. If you know anything about Mr. Sinister, he's up there. He's a baddie. I want to say he's a baddie, but he is kind of uh, he's
You
not
could
really
say
an
opportunist. He's
yeah,
an
he's not really an
opportunist.
anti-hero. He's not really an anti-hero, but
Yeah.
he's not really always bad. He's just out for his own thing.
Good for him.
And so, he has a young group similar to the New Mutants called the
Mhm.
Hell Lions. And so basically she took on a leadership role to supervise them.
Okay.
And in current Marvel storyline, that's where she is now.
All
And
right.
that's
Okay. All right. So Jubilee was an X-Men. Now, my introduction to Jubilee was the amazing X-Men cartoon of the 1990s, that yellow suit there. Um, her full name, but she was like the spoiled little sister on the team that was always whining that she never got to go on missions and things like that. That's not really far from her actual comic book character either. So her real name is Jubilation Lee. She's a member of the X-Men, raised in Beverly Hills. So, I guess she wouldn't be a Valley girl, but still. But she was born to Hong Kong immigrants. She can generate explosive light blasts from her hands. And she was added to the group sort of around the late 80s into the 90s. She was a young member, sort of that teenager amongst the group. Again, always remembered her as being, like they just never would let her go on missions. And Wolverine was kind of her big brother. She's a highly skilled gymnast. She's light on her feet. She was later on, unfortunately, turned into a vampire after she was exposed to vampire blood. She also had turned Wolverine into a vampire at one point in time. Maybe Roland, you want to elaborate on that? Because I don't remember when she was turned into a vampire. I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, they were it was during a battle. I can't remember exactly who they were battling. It might have been Dracula himself,
Yeah,
but
not Morbius.
No, it wasn't Morbius, but she wasn't bitten.
Uh-huh.
The blood splashed on her.
Okay.
And so over a period of time, she basically started getting these vampiric not abilities but ways. Like she
Okay.
realized she was thirsting for blood and everything.
All right.
And she basically turned around and turned Wolverine into a vampire during this time. And they were both able to I forget who changed them. I'm looking it up now, but somebody was able
Somebody
to reverse the process.
was it Blade?
I will tell you Vampire Times. Here we go. Okay. So basically, it is saying that she was hanging out on Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco, and she was with Pixie. And a vampiric suicide bomber exploded nearby, coating the area in blood.
Wow.
And And so later, and I'm gonna read it word for word. Later on Utopia, Dr. Nemesis discovered that Jubilee had been infected with vampire blood that would slowly overtake her. Ultimately, a hypnotic suggestion took over her and she fled to her masters. So basically, that's how she started. But then she got bit. She got bit. She did get bitten by Zaris, who is the son of Dracula, and she became a full-fledged vampire. At this time, Wolverine chased after her and Zaris and used Jubilee as a bait to draw him in. Um, Basically, Jubilee turned Wolverine. He led an army of vampires to attack Utopia. And then, but it was planned. It was revealed that Cyclops had planned for the event and had Nemesis implant nanites in Wolverine's blood. So after Dracula kills Zaris and the X-Men defeat the vampire army, Jubilee was released into the X-Men's care and placed into a cell until a cure could be found. And so basically the nanites are what were able to bring Wolverine back.
Yeah.
And they had to use them on Jubilee as well.
Interesting. Again, I when I read X-Men, that was that early 90s, so
right.
Didn't know she was a vampire, but okay.
But watch this. At the end of this storyline, it says that Storm informs her that the adoption papers that she had went through legally, making her the mother of Shogo, whoever that is.
I love comics.
So Jubilee is
a mom. Yeah, I love comics, and I love the different storylines, and oh gosh, it's great.
Right. All right. So our next character is Sunfire. Now, Sunfire is of Japanese descent, and basically, he lost his mom to radiation poisoning when he was a young child, and he was raised by his uncle Tomo to hate the West and seek for a return to Japan's imperial days. So
he's a product of World War II.
Yeah. Now he is basically nothing gave him his power. He's always had his powers.
Yeah.
He is basically one of Marvel Universe's what we call alpha mutants. One of the strongest mutants out there. He gains his powers by basically sucking up the sun's energy and basically being able to harness it and direct it. He served for a time as a soldier for the criminal dragon lord of Krakanawa, which brought him into direct conflict with Prince Namor.
Yes.
What ended up happening is they were trying to restore Japan's status as a world power. So Sunfire was sent to destroy an American cargo ship. And that's what led him into conflict with Namor, because he realized the ramifications of what was going on. And he basically ended up teaming up with Namor to defeat the Dragon Lord. So basically, he was brought back to Japan as a hero because he was trying to overcome some things that in the past, when he basically killed his uncle, they basically said he had dishonored his father by killing his uncle. So he was him helping Namor allowed him to redeem himself. It's there that Namor was not really in good standing with the rest of the world at all at that time as well. So basically, Captain America and Namor were battling around the same time, but over Osaka, and it was for a piece of the evil eye. And this was part of the Avengers Defenders War. Basically, Sunfire interrupted them and tried to take the eye for themselves because he thought that neither one of them had a right to fight over it in his homeland because it was a artifact of Japan. But basically, what ends up happening is he had it for a brief moment, and Namor knocked him out of the sky, causing Captain America to come in to basically get the eye. So Sunfire is, he's gone against the people that we would think of as Marvel heroes. But again, if we look at the time frame of when this is happening, the Avengers Defenders storyline is probably I believe it's one of those 1960s, early 1970s. So
70s, yeah.
Japan was still basically in the comics was looked at as basically the enemy.
Yeah, he was one of those characters that when they added him to the X-Men, his backstory was very much pro-Japan. He was so pro-Japan that I think his first outing with the X-Men, he was killed. Oh no, that wasn't him. He wasn't. It was the other guy that was killed. But his first outing with the X-Men was pretty much his last outing too. Right. Because once they went to the island, he was like, I'm going back home. Right. We cleaned up your mess, this mess. My people need me more than you need me, basically.
Right. And right before joining the X-Men, and this is part of his turnaround as far as being able to come out on the world stage as a hero. Basically he ended up fighting Iron Man. Yeah. But in the middle of that fight, he was knocked unconscious and Iron Man saved him. And so this is a life that he would never forget. And basically at this point in time, this is when he changed his views on Americans. And it's right after that, that's when he became a on again, I guess you call it on again, off again member of the X-Men.
He doesn't stay around too long.
Right. Right. And because I have a note here that say that where is it? That after joining the X-Men, another one of the groups that he's a big part of, and I didn't realize this, but because we see this on Disney, but Big Hero 6. He is a member of Big Hero 6. Because the Silver Samurai basically is the one who formed. They don't show that in the cartoon, but the Silver Samurai who basically fought Wolverine back in the day is the character who started Big Hero 6, and they were put together to dismantle organized crime in Japan. So that's Sunfire.
Yukio. She's part of the X-Men. Am I correct?
Not an X-Men, more
not
like
an X-Man, but
X-Men.
She's a friend of the X-Men.
Yes.
Yes. So she was a former assassin for the crime lord Shingen, the leader of the clan of Shida. Okay, Shida. She's a longtime friend of Storm. Oh, okay. And she is hand-to-hand combat is her thing. Japanese martial arts. She's entrusted by Wolverine to care for his foster daughter, Emiko. Now, am I wrong in saying this, Roland, but was Emiko in Wolverine 2?
I want to say that she was the character.
That's what I thought.
That he came in contact with.
What was
that?
Wolverine 2. Not Wolverine 1. We will. I didn't have a problem with Wolverine 1, but I did have a problem with their depiction of Deadpool. Oh gosh. But yes, she faced Hellverine, which was Wolverine's body possessed by a demon. Lost the use of both of her legs and is wheelchair bound now. She's the current leader of the Four Clan. Ooh, that's a tongue twister. Four Clans crime syndicate, much to the dismay of Storm. So even though her and Storm are still good friends, she is back on the other side of the law, which Storm doesn't necessarily agree with. But yeah,
Right.
was I
Now,
right?
you remember the young lady in the Wolverine movie that I guess saves him?
Yeah,
Like I guess he's at the
yes,
bar or something.
yeah,
Okay,
that's her.
that's her character.
That's what I thought. That's
Yukio.
what I
Yeah, the
thought.
one who rides around with him the whole time.
Yep, yep. So that becomes his foster daughter. Oh, that's cute. Yes, but she is not a member of the X-Men, but she's a friend of the X-Men, and
Right.
but she's also a crime lord, Japanese crime lord now. So
Right.
for her.
But now it says in the readings that the only reason why she is the leader of these clans is because they were at all four clans were at war.
Oh, I'm
And
sure of it.
and well, the four clans were at war, but they were tearing up a lot of they were make a lot of collateral damage was going on. And so in order to save the neighborhoods and the people, she basically stepped in and took control of them. Now she still lets them,
Do what they do.
their illegal things,
Yeah.
but the loss of life has been mitigated because of her taking over. Storm doesn't like it though.
Yeah, I mean, in Storm's eyes, evil is evil.
Right.
Storm has a very her moral compass is very high. Hence the
Right.
reason why she and Black Panther are no longer together.
Right.
The funny thing is, yeah, she basically said, if I run it, it will be at least it'll be ran a little bit better.
Right.
I can't be mad at her for that.
No, not at all.
Right.
Okay. Our next character is Shang-Chi. Now, Shang-Chi was, I want to say that this character is supposed to be the Bruce Lee of the Marvel Universe.
You're exactly right.
He is the most feared martial artist. He was raised to become a deadly assassin by his father, who was the immortal crime lord and sorcerer Fu Manchu. However, when Shang-Chi became aware of his father's evil nature, he defected after his first assignment. He then began to attack various elements of his father's criminal empire and allied himself with his father's archenemy, which is basically MI6.
Yeah, see, they were based in London, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
So in basically in his travels, he met up with a bunch of other martial artists and superheroes from around the world. And some of these, his rival, which is Cat, he teamed up with Iron Fist, Jack of Hearts, and White Tiger. So, and basically, after a while of basically playing the games of deceit that are needed in the, in the spy world, he retired from espionage. Now, they say he resurfaced to assist MI6 against the Sci-Fan ninjas when they tried to come into power. He's been members of a few heavy hitter Marvel groups. He's been a member of Heroes for Hire, the Secret Avengers, the one that he's best known for, Marvel Knights. Daredevil, in order to basically bring the Punisher to legal justice. That didn't work too well, but the people who were along with Shang-Chi and the Marvel Knights were Daredevil, Black, I do believe, matter of fact, let me see, there was Daredevil, Black, Moon Knight, Luke Cage, and Dagger of Cloak and Dagger fame. So now he has been, when he was a part of Heroes for Hire, that's when he joined Misty Knight and Colleen Wing, and basically they were a superhuman bail bondsman team, basically, if that's what you want to call it.
Yeah, I remember that. I think when we covered Daredevil, we
Right,
talked about that
right,
because you had the group, you had the Defenders.
right.
Um, and I want to say that they wanted to do something for him on Netflix, but they never got around to it.
Well, I think they were going to bring him in
The Defenders, right?
on the Defenders thing
Yeah.
before
I,
that.
I remember talks of that, but again, now he has his own movie, which is even
Right,
better. So
right.
you can't argue with that. I mean, I'd rather have the movie.
Nah. And he is one of the Avengers. He was brought in to the Avengers, the mainstream Avenger team
Hmm.
after the Avengers versus the X-Men debacle.
Yeah.
Because after that, Captain America and Iron Man wanted to make a stronger team,
Hmm.
so he was one of the first people that was chosen for this.
Oh, cool. All
Yeah.
right.
All right.
Amadeus Cho, also known as Braun, or is Braun his last name too? No,
Oh,
Amadeus.
well, he changed his
He's
Amadeus
Braun.
Cho.
Yeah.
He went as the Hulk, but in order to have his own, you know, have his
Yeah.
own thing going, he
He
goes
calls
by the
himself
name
Braun.
Braun. Yeah.
Okay. So he is a Korean American raised in Tucson, Arizona. His parents were killed after he won a online game that was set up by the Pythagoras Dupree to find highly intelligent individuals and eliminate them. Well, they did not eliminate Amadeus because he became the new Hulk. He absorbs the Hulk's powers using a special nanites that absorbed a new type of gamma radiation that the Hulk could not maintain, and to keep the Hulk from going into meltdown and killing innocent people. So, as you can see, he looks a lot like Big Green Hulk. He does not, correct me if I'm wrong, Roland, but he does not, unlike the Hulk who goes sort of into a childlike state,
Mm-hmm.
this particular Hulk does not.
No, he maintains
He
his
maintains his
intelligence.
intelligence. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
What it is, Amadeus Cho was a basically a brilliant scientist. Well,
Mhm.
he became a scientist, but at first, he was just a kid that
Yeah.
when he won that online game, what happened? Pythagoras Dupree basically had set up a competition, and what it was is that anybody who could win, he basically saw as a threat to himself. So,
Hmm.
although Amadeus Cho was not the first person to win, he
Hmm.
was the first person to realize what was going on
Yeah.
and basically took him on and fought him. He had not become the Hulk yet.
No.
At this time. What ended up happening is he becomes friends with oh my goodness, what is David?
Okay.
What was no? Was Rick? The Hulk's friend from when he original turned when Banner in the
Oh,
original storyline. In the original storyline, remember he had Bruce Banner has a friend named Rick who is just he's not a scientist or anything. He's just hanging out in the desert
hmm
and he's driving across the test range. He doesn't realize it. And matter of fact, I think this is from the first Hulk movie. That's
yeah.
just to let you know who that character is. He's driving across the range, and Banner runs out to save him, and he ends up being the one that gets dosed
Gets
with the
hit.
radiation. So
Yeah, I barely remember that movie, but
yeah,
I know the scene. I know the scene you're talking about, but I can't remember the guy's name who he
right.
saved.
His name was Rick, but
I can't remember his like.
oh, okay,
Yeah, but
yeah,
I remember the scene. Yeah,
yeah. Amadeus Cho was actually a friend of Rick's,
gotcha.
and he basically got in cool with them and started hanging out at the lab or whatnot. And the nanites, what happened? The Hulk, they found Bruce Banner experimenting on himself in his old lab. They thought the old lab had been shut down, and so he was experimenting on himself with dead gamma cells. And what ends up happening is those gamma cells are starting to mutate and they're affecting the Hulk. and he is actually I don't know if you've seen the Red Hulk. He goes into this atomic state where he can actually blow off an energy burst. Well, that was about to happen with the regular Hulk. And so the nanites that created, they created them for something else to depower another gamma individual. They did not work on the Hulk. So what Amadeus Cho did was to inject himself with the nanites and bleed the power off of the Hulk. But what it did was it bled the power off the Hulk, but it turned Amadeus Cho into a Hulk.
Who could keep his intelligence.
Who could keep his intelligence.
Excellent.
So, and that's the story of Amadeus Cho.
Yeah. There's him, there's Hulkling, who's actually a changeling.
Yeah, Hulkling.
Not really a Hulk.
Hulkling is actually like a scroll or something.
Yeah.
Of that nature.
Yeah. He's a squirrel. Yeah. All right.
All right. So our next character is a character that, you know, they didn't really say, well, they did say when they brought her into the Marvel Universe, but I'm surprised that they brought her in 2014. That was her first appearance. But in order to bring her in, they had to retcon Peter Parker's story. So basically what she was a classmate of Peter Parker when he went on that famous tour of the science facility and he got bit by the spider. If you remember, the spider bit him on his hand and then fell off of his hand and they could not find the spider. Well, in this storyline, basically what ends up happening is that spider hit the floor and crawled up her leg and bit her on the ankle. So while Peter Parker is going home and going through all these crazy things that are amounting to him coming up with his powers, you know, he was not able to actually shoot webs. He built his web slingers. Peter Parker basically started growing fibers on his hands that allowed him to walk up walls, and he had his spider sense. The spider, when it bit Cindy Moon, it did a little something different. She was actually able to create an organic web from her hands, unlike Spider-Man. Now, basically, and that was basically the first manifestation of her powers, was that she basically webbed up her parents. And it was at this time that a man by the name of Ezekiel Sims came and took her away to basically to train her in the use of her powers. And like I said, this is a retcon of the original Spider-Man storyline, in that what they found out was that her powers were totemic in nature, meaning that now her powers meant that she was actually a spider totem for an extra dimensional being that basically granted spider powers to whoever it chose. They found out that she was being tracked by what they call a totemic predator, which is named Morlon. And what Morlon is an extra dimensional being that basically is a part of a group that was sent, or whose main purpose is to basically destroy all the spider totems across the multiverse. So
maybe we'll see her. Maybe we'll see her in the next Spider-Verse movie.
I believe she should be. She should be. In the comics, she is basically become an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., an agent of Atlas. She's a member of the Champions, and she's a member of the Order of the Web, which basically all of the spider totems are a part of. So Miles Morales, Cindy Moon, the original Peter Parker. There are a few different spider totem characters now in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, I was saying Gwen Stacy.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. Right. And last but not least, we have Miss Colleen Wing. Now, if you tuned into our Daredevil episode, or our Luke Cage episode,
It
or
was Luke
yeah,
Cage.
yeah, not Daredevil too. I thought we covered her too.
You know, I went back and we did more extensive on
Okay,
Luke Cage because of what was going on with the Netflix series at the time.
gotcha. But yeah, Miss Wing is a soldier for the mystical criminal organization, The Hand. I think we've talked about them. Is this the same hand?
Yes.
Okay, look at them, far-reaching. Her life was saved by Misty Knight. At the same time, Misty lost her arm to save Colleen, and that formed a bond between the two of them. They also have a sort of detective agency together.
Yes.
But Night
Restoration.
Night and Wing, play on words there. But yeah, and so there's a bond between those two, that a friendship that is bonded there after she saved her life. In the House of M storyline, she is a member of the Dragons, which leader is Shang Chi. I recently reread the House of M, which is, I mean, I don't care how many times I reread the House of M. It's just a great storyline. I reread it after we did Wanda Maximoff, after we did Scarlet Witch, and it's a great story. Fantastic. All the awards it won, it deserved. But she is in that, and she is a member of with Shang-Chi. She is a current hero for hire, so that whole Luke Cage Defenders thing. She's a Daughters of the Dragon and Nightwing Restorations, which again, a Night and Wing, they are a detective agency. They work together to solve crimes throughout not just New York City, but everywhere else too. She is depicted. I don't remember what she was depicted like on the show, Roland, but I know here she's redhead.
Um, she is depicted as a brunette.
On the
Yes,
show.
on the
Okay.
show,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
um, and actually on the show they show that she had been a member of the Hand,
Yeah.
because you know they in on the show the Hand has a more sinister thing going on in the Daredevil universe, but in
Mm-hmm.
Luke Cage universe, basically they're a school. They're set up like a school,
Gotcha. Yeah.
you know, with
So yeah.
underlying initiatives. So
Yeah. So again, she's brunette on the show, but here in the comics, she's actually a redhead who whose features, some say, well, she really Asian. She is Asian. So yeah, she is part of that whole universe. And as you can see, she carries a big sword and speaks very little, like Teddy Roosevelt.
right,
She's pretty bad with that thing too. So but yeah, I like the whole Nightwing thing. Love it.
right. Okay.
So that concludes Asian, and unfortunately, I can say this: not enough Pacific Islander representation in comics these days. Unfortunately, we did not find any characters that were Pacific Islander that was a part of DC and Marvel universe. There were some that were local to particular cultures, but they didn't fit into this particular narrative we were talking about today. Just going to go through some of our works cited because there's a lot of them. You can always come back to these on the slides and see where we got all of our facts and information from about all these different characters and the history of a lot of good stuff out there. A lot of.
Hey, can I say something real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I go back and I look in the Marvel database, now these were characters that, and I'm speaking on Pacific Islander characters.
Mm-hmm.
These are not characters that had a entry in the Marvel dictionary. They didn't have
Mm-hmm.
a picture or anything. But
Mm-hmm.
when I go online and look it up, they're not coming up on the Marvel the Marvel database has a list, and it's very small.
Yeah.
And you're not going to believe who's at the bottom of the list. Most of these characters are basically they show Null as being Pacific Islander. They show Shuma Gorath from the multiverse as being a Pacific Islander.
I saw that for Noel, but I was just like,
Yeah, I didn't understand that.
because I was like, when I did look up that, I saw that list too, and I was like, no, we just covered Noel, and I was like,
Right.
The beastie looking thing, okay.
Null is the I want to say the
from,
king of the symbiotes.
yeah, it was from, wasn't it from
The Spider-Man, Spider-Man.
but also we covered him in something else that was recent. And I want to say it was Scarlet Witch.
You know what?
One of her enemies. One of her enemies was Null.
You know what? It's not showing because he's more associated with Venom and Carnage. But the Scarlet Witch, hold on. The Scarlet Witch is listed as a Pacific Islander. Don't know how.
You know what? Wanda Maximoff from the islands, the mountains.
George Tarleton is listed. But you know who George Tarleton is, right?
Nope.
That's MODOK.
The head?
Yes. Who actually has a
TV show.
I just saw a TV show that's funny.
Yeah.
So no. I'm not sure, even though this is on the Marvel fandom thing, I'm not sure how accurate it is.
Yeah,
because like you said, we didn't come up with a whole lot of Pacific Islander.
Yeah. What I did find, I was just like, that's not what we were talking about. But I'm very shocked by Noel because no, not at all.
Right.
All right. So some new stuff that we have going on at the library right now. We have some new items to check out. We got in Black Lightning, Brick City Blues. This is featuring characters from the CW show and the co-creator of Black Lightning, Tony Isabella, whose original work. It's melding these stories together to come up with this new collection of series. So when the CW show came out, they released this and they melded it with the original story that Tony Isabella co-created. Jefferson Pierce once knew he was Black Lightning isn't the same hero he was. He's older and wiser, and he reluctantly resurfaces with a ferocious new look and a dangerous edge in the city desperately needing a hero. So basically, it's a retelling of his origin story, but now it's including that CW storyline in it too. So you can meld both of them together.
And it takes place in Cleveland.
Even better, not Gotham. But it's available to check out. We got it in a couple of weeks ago. Next on the list is the Batman Who Laughs. Batman Laughs, a Batman Who Always Plays to Win. This is behind Scott Snyder actually wrote this one, and gives you a look inside the most terrifying version of Batman ever. He's a superstar. He and superstar artist Jock, who is the artist on this one. They kick off a chain of events that makes the Dark Knight's Metal seem like child's play. So Dark Knight Metals was released, I believe, last year or the year before. It's 2021. I keep forgetting. So around 2018 is when Dark Knight's Metal was released. Batman Who Laughs not only survived his fight with the Joker at the end of Dark Knight's Metal, but is now enacting a sinister plan across the multiverses, something both terrifying and oddly familiar. Bruce Wayne realizes the only way to stop this madman is to kill him. He must consider violating his own very rule of not to kill with this unstable villain in the Batman Who Laughs. As Bruce begins to deduce that his current life is somehow wrong and that all the mistakes he made are somehow connected, Batman Who Laughs unleashes a brand new evil to enter one of the most punishing Batmen of the dark multiverse. Grim Knight. I'm excited to read this one. I've checked it out a couple of times and I haven't gotten to it yet, but I will read it soon. Um, and the last one here is Batman and the Outsiders. We had a lot of new DC stuff in the last month, so forgive us. There is some, today we got in some new Marvel stuff and some independent things also. So next week we will showcase those. But Batman and the Outsiders Volume 3 is The Demon's Fire. This is all Ra's al Ghul there is back and tormenting the Bat family. He's taken everything away from Ra's al Ghul's had everything taken away from him, his League of Assassins, his power, and even his family. All he has left is his mission to bend the world to his will and save it from itself. He's more dangerous than ever, and it'll take the combined team of the Outsiders to take him down. But the outsiders are far from all together. So Black Lightning must push his powers to their limits and try to show Batman that he has potentially has no limit. Katana is trying to save orphans and signal Soul from the allure of the ruthless Lady Shiva, who's acting benevolent at the moment. So Mama is back in town and she is coming back for her children. But Katana can see through her ruse. The Outsiders will also have to overcome their shortcomings, ambitions, and insecurities to stop Ra's al Ghul from using the device that promises to change the balance of power in the entire DCU. So that sounds exciting too to read, because anytime Ra's al Ghul is in the picture, cannot not read. What do you say? He's pretty much one of Batman's biggest foes. But it is today is May 25th, so we are into the third day of summer reading here in Clayton County. So please make sure you go to claytonpl.org and check out the summer reading activities for all ages. This year we have adult summer reading, so even if you're joining us on Graphic Novel Club and reading this stuff, go to Beanstack on claytonpl.org and keep track of all the books you read this summer for a chance to win some cool prizes. Next week, we have the Mischief of Magic himself.
Loki,
yes. So be on the lookout at that. I know we usually meet every 2 weeks, but this time we have to meet. We had a bit of a break since the last time we met, and so now we're going to meet next week to get back on schedule. We have Loki coming up June 1st, June 15th. We're looking at some of the prominent characters that are in Marvel and DC, kind of like what we did with this and Black History Month. It will be LGBTQ characters of Marvel and DC. So be on the lookout for that. And then at the end of the month, June 29th, we'll be covering one of Teen Titans' greatest and Doom Patrol greatest, which is Beast Boy. So that's the month of June. But to kick it off, a lot of green this month. A lot of green.
Yeah.
We got Loki and we got Beast Boy. So we didn't plan that, but kind of happened that way. So yeah, check us out, claytonpl.org, see all the summer activities. Everything is going to be virtual, so be prepared to tune in. There will be no in-person programming this summer, so but you can still come to the library, you can still check out books, and now you can use computers. So stop by and make a reservation if you need a computer too. Got anything rolling for next time?
Well, just can't wait to see you back here
next week.
right.
June 1st, 4 p.m. And this mischief is ahead. I'm excited about this because I don't even think we've covered Thor, so this would be exciting.
No, we haven't. So
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. But we'll see you guys next week.